Tonight we're in Carlow. I'm in the Bishop's house with Bishop Dennis Nolte. Bishop Dennis is on the Council for Marriage and the Family, and he's also president of a court, so he's well placed to talk about the family. And we're looking tonight at the Christian vision of marriage. Bishop Dennis, I have been to a marriage ceremony recently, and it wasn't a Christian marriage, it was an estate marriage. But the person who spoke on behalf of the state spoke beautifully about love and about long-term commitment and, you know, the values of that. But Pope Francis is very clear in The Joy of Love that the Christian view of marriage is something special. What do you see that as, and what does the Pope say?
Well, I think absolutely, it's very special. The Christian view of marriage is the Lord whispering into every young couple getting married, God loves you. God accompanies you. God journeys with you through every aspect of your marriage. He's whispering into every couple, I'm with you. I'm there for you. I remember a few years ago, Father Tom Waldron, a tune priest, producing a lovely tape, the times of the tapes on the wedding feast of Cain. He said, the real great image of marriage is the Lord whispering into the couple on their wedding day, you're loved. You love each other, but also there's a third person in your marriage. I'm there and I love you.
Well, that's very important, because and it's difficult in the times that we live in to talk about, you know, experiencing God in marriage or what God is. That would mean that your image of God is actually really important, because when you believe that God is with you, what God are we talking about? What is the image for me that of that God? And the Pope does talk about this in The Joy of Love.
Pope Francis is very strong on AMORIS KATECHEZE about the image of God we all have. And I think chapter 4 is beautiful, where he talks, love is patient, love is kind, love is gentle, love doesn't judge. The God I believe in, and the God who whispers into that lovely young couple's ears on their day of their wedding, and as they prepare on their marriage preparation course, and in the early years of marriage saying, I'm with you, I'm journeying with you, is a God who isn't judging them, but is showering them with his love. I love the image, Pat, of embracing. God is putting his arms around you and me, all couples, preparing and in the sacrament at the moment.
And Pope Francis talks about the Trinity in that. It's a huge theological doctrine, but he does say that God as three makes a difference. What is that?
I'm going to bring my days back to Drogheda, when I was a parish priest in Drogheda, and I used to meet a man called Michael McGowan in the Adoration Chapel, and Michael would say, Father Dennis, we don't spend enough time talking about God our Father. We hear all about the Son, all about the Spirit, all about the Mother, not enough about God the Father. The Trinity is powerful because it's Father, Son and Spirit. The Father is the one who embraces, who hugs. The Spirit is the one who is all around that couple. And the Son is the one who suffers with them at times, who understands pain, who understands struggle, and he equally understands joy and understands those great moments of fruitfulness and faithfulness.
And when we look at marriage and we look at family life, I don't think there's any person in Ireland or any family in the world that doesn't experience tough times. Even just ordinary living, like you have to have give and take, and it can be hard not to be selfish or whatever. The Pope talks about knowing the grace of God. You talk about that relational God, caring. Does it really make a difference if people can understand what that grace is? Because it's such a big word, and concretely, how do we tap into it or know it or become aware of it?
Pat, I couldn't be a bishop without understanding grace. Every day I get up out of bed, I go into my chapel next door to the bedroom, and the little light is on for the Blessed Sacrament to remind me he is present, he is there. And I sit and pray for a while quietly and experience his grace accompany me on my day's journey, whatever that brings me. For a couple in marriage, the very same. the Lord is there. Sometimes the couple are aware of that, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're plugged in, sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're practicing, sometimes they're not. It's a real world we live in. But the Lord is always there. And what is the grace for marriage? What's the grace for me as a bishop? What's the grace for any of us? It's forgiveness. It's being aware of our woundedness. In chapter 8 of AMORIS KATECHEZE, the word fragility is a much better one than weakness for the title of that chapter. Accompany people in their fragility. We all are fragile. And grace, I think, puts us together again. Humpty Dumpty sat on the wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. All the king's horses, all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again, but God can. And that's the joy of grace. God can put all of us back together again. As a bishop who also happens to be president of a Cord Catholic Marriage Care Service, I'm so aware of the couples who come, the individuals who come for counselling, for therapy at different stages. Some couples experience huge hurt in relationships, and we as church need to be there for them. We need to walk with them. We need to accompany them. That's why an agency like Accord, Retrovile, Teams of Our Lady, Marriage Encounter are all there to support in all our parishes couples in tender moments.
And there are families that don't fit the model that sometimes is presented, like the mother, father and the nuclear two happy children. I mean, that's a vision that is, for the most part, not realistic. We have, single parents, people who are widowed, all different types of family relationships, particularly now in the 21st century. Yet in this Amoris Laetitia, the Pope does seem to hold a place very much as you go through it for all types of families. He says at one point that all families, regardless of their weakness or shape, are surrounded by love. And that's really important, that inclusivity, isn't it?
Beautiful image. It's a beautiful image. And I love our Pope for it. In chapter 8 of Amoris Laetitia, he's saying, look, there's no ideal family. We all struggle in different ways. Of course, we know the traditional family, and we do our best to live that, and many of our traditional families are the ones who are the backbone of our parish life. But also be aware of those who don't reach that ideal. But as church, be there for them. Never close a door. He used the lovely phrase that the confessional should never be a torture chamber. Yeah. Be there. The mercy of God, the forgiveness of God, are so important. He has a lovely line where he talks about a couple maybe who live together, and they're living together for a number of years and they haven't availed of the sacrament of marriage for different reasons. And he says, maybe they need to stay together for the sake of the children. It's a very practical. We're not there, we shouldn't be there with a rule book. We should be there with a heart of mercy, without letting in any way our teaching or our church or tradition down, but be there with compassion and love and mercy.
And also some of those families that you speak about, I mean, it's not just that they're necessarily in need of forgiveness, they're also contributing hugely in terms of, their love, the values maybe that they're imparting. You can be a lone parent and be bringing up your kids to be just, to be truthful, to be full of integrity, and you can be a happy family, a coherent, good family, that it's not always in need of some kind of help. All families need forgiveness. All people do things that hurt one another, isn't that?
Some of the strongest women I know are single parents who have had to struggle in life and are powerful women, and sometimes powerful men who bring up children, a family on their own, and do so bravely. So of course, as parish and church, we have a lot to learn. I'm not judging people, I'm just saying we have a lot to learn from these people. They have a lot to offer us as parish and as family. And what is a parish but a family of families?
And that's exactly what the Pope talks about, as you said, in that chapter where he talks in chapter 8, even referring to unions outside of marriage or people who've been divorced and remarried. He also talks about the need for pastoral care, for discernment. Yeah. He talks about conscience and the importance of recognising the role of conscience, which is all church teaching, of course.
Without a doubt. And of course, Conscience is important, and that sometimes can be controversial for people, because conscience has to be formed. It's not just what I think today, something whimsical, and then tomorrow I change it. We've got to form our conscience. We've got to, maybe it's important for couples maybe living in different situations to speak to the local priest about their situation. Not simply just to go along without ever reflecting or stopping on our tracks, and form our conscience accordingly. Conscience has to be formed. And I think when we form our conscience, when we advise our conscience, then we live by it and do our best. And AMORIS KATECHEZE is all about that joy of love, doing our best within the embrace of the Father, Son and Spirit.
Yeah, he says something lovely, I think, at one point about that the family, despite all its weaknesses, can in its vocation be a light to the world.
There's no doubt
That's a lovely image, isn't it?
No doubt about it. When tragedy hits a parish, the first thing that happens is neighbours come in with sandwiches. They never do any talking, they come with sandwiches. I love it. And then you meet somebody else washing dishes, somebody else maybe milking the cows or mowing the grass or washing the cars. And I think it's wonderful. At a time like that, a family can be a beacon of light in a community, because they come together to support the one who's hurt, who's suffering, who's struggling.
And he singles out again and I know this is a favourite theme of his, the elderly. You know, families who look after their elderly, who even sometimes bring their elderly in to live in their family. So he talks like from the sacrament, from being both, from the toddler to the elderly person, that when they are cared and protected, that's such a grace that's in the family situation. And I think that it is a lovely sense of even those who are, that could sometimes be on the margins, that in the Christian vision of family, they are seen as central.
Pat, family is intergenerational. And it's so important. I think we can learn a lot from other traditions and cultures where the grandparents maybe live with the family. And they're part of that circle. Pope Francis often refers to himself as being a grandfather or maybe a granduncle. And it's a lovely image. He represents, at 81 years of age, he represents the wonderful people of that vintage who, and younger and older, who give all of us tremendous example of faith and practice in all our parishes.
He uses the image of the Holy Family in Nazareth as he says an inspiration for families. Now I think initially when you look at that and you think, hold on a minute now, the Holy Family in Nazareth, we don't know an awful lot about them. The model we were often brought up was again this, you had Jesus, the Son of God, with Mary, the wonderful Mary who said yes, and Joseph, who was, a model that we'd all love to aspire to. Models that really, in a way, only make you want to withdraw and say, I can't be like that. Like most families, there's unemployment, maybe the children have to leave home, there might be people with special needs, addiction. Like on the ground, families seem to be a far cry from the model we were presented of the Holy Family in Nazareth. Like it's like something so idealistic that we won't even bother going there, because we'll never match up to that.
It frightens people, I think, sometimes the model. Last December in our diocesan reach out, we gave every family a fridge magnet, and I told them when they open the envelope, you won't find a fridge, but you will find a magnet to go in the fridge, an image of the Holy Family, but framed by a simple message: joy to the world. The Holy Family are there for all of us as a beacon of light. No different than good families in our parish communities are beacons of light. No different than all families have a certain aspect of that being a beacon, an example to others. Of course we struggle after a good example. That's why it's called good example. We're not perfect. None of us are perfect. I think we've got to be aware of our own weaknesses. We've got to be aware of our own shortcomings, our own failings, and equally make some allowances for others. And that's part of being a family. There was always a great phrase in Ireland. We used the phrase, oh, she's the black sheep, he's the black sheep of the family. It was a strange phrase to use, I often thought. But then, being a farmer's son, I know exactly what a black sheep is and how it represented the whole herd of sheep.
How do you mean? Explain that to me.
The black sheep is a phrase that somebody said, she's the odd one, he's
Yeah.
the odd one.
Yeah.
And equally, a
Yeah.
black sheep in a whole herd of shepherd sheep would be an odd one.
Yeah.
And you know, where did that black sheep come from?
Yeah, but what is it? You said it represented the whole of the herd for the farmer.
Maybe we are the black sheep, maybe we're the odd one out ourselves. And maybe we just have to be more aware of the pain, of the struggle that we go through, and equally sensitive to the struggle others are going through at the moment, Pat.
And of course, Pope Francis urges people to reflect on the different stages in the gospel where it does give us a vision of the family as a family that maybe did have its issues. Because, I mean, Jesus did get lost when he went on the big caravan trail. And, you know, said, hold on, I'm different. Did you not know I have to be doing this? And was scolded. And Mary herself, when she went into the temple, I mean, she was told a sword will pierce your heart. Like, you know, this is not going to be an easy ride for you either. They had to flee, like many people who've had to flee from refugees and migrants and people like that. So they knew about oppression and they did know. So I suppose when we reflect on that family story more, rather than just the image, it does, as the Pope says, it will give you more of an understanding of they had it as tough as anybody else.
I think, you see, when we talk about the Holy Family image in Bethlehem, the image we celebrated last Christmas and Emmanuel, God with us during the year, it very much is idealistic. But before they ever got to the stable, they were in a donkey. It was a long journey. After the stable, there was a flight into Egypt. There was nothing simple about any of that. Life wasn't simple and isn't simple. And that's the simplest message of AMORIS KATECHEZE. And we've got to be aware, it's in the complexities we live life.